Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here and to talk to you. Apologies for not being there physically. Thank you for coming to this summit, and thank you to Anjali for organizing this. We go many, many years. She's not as old as I am, but we connect through a lot of international solidarity and commonality. So I'm very happy to address this very important group of people, and I hope that your interactions and beginnings of connecting and networking will turn into a fantastic blossoming of a big movement in Canada, working in solidarity with the rest of us in the Global South. Well, basically, my own background is that I started as I am a lawyer, a public interest lawyer. So I started as a public interest lawyer, working at the local level with communities affected by, in this particular case, was rare earth mining. But at that time, I was working with a community who was affected by radioactive poisoning. This was actually introduced by Mitsubishi Chemicals of Japan. So you have a foreign multinational come into our country with a joint venture agreement. And they came here because our laws are not so strict as what they would define in the market economy as competitive, because it's more difficult to pollute in Japan. You can't pollute as like you can in our part of the world, so it's fine. You can bring in the toxic and the dangerous technologies to our part of the world, where unfortunately it's seen as our lives don't matter. And so this is what happened, and I was horrified at what we saw was actually this technology being not allowed in Japan, but allowed in Malaysia. And so we were asking the government of Malaysia, why are you doing this? And at that time, this was because Malaysia was promoting its own car policy and they needed Mitsubishi. So this actually shows you about the connection of big corporate power, the transnationals, who actually have of course, we know what their agenda is. It's about consumer products and selling and locking us into a consumption and pattern. And so the car economy became very big. And this is really, of course, connected to the fossil fuel economy in terms of the use of cars and so on, and dependence on oil and gas and where we are at in terms of climate change. So at that time, as a young lawyer, I began to see that I asked these questions. Why are these double standards? Why is it that the life of a northerner, a Canadian or a Japanese or an American or an Israeli more important than the rest of us in the global south? Are we expendable? Don't we count? Are we not human beings? So this is what provoked a lot of anger. I mean, I was young then. It provoked a lot of anger and emotion. And what I could do at that stage as a young lawyer was actually to work with the community, with a team of lawyers bringing this to the court. But we really needed the international alliance. We had the Japanese parliamentarians who actually, these were the opposition parliamentarians who saw what was happening and saw the terrible workings of Mitsubishi and the exporting the dirty technology to our part of the world. So every time our case was going on, they demonstrated in front of Mitsubishi Chemicals, not just the parliamentarians, but others as well. So you could see an alliance that this was not just a Malaysian local case, but it was actually one with an international dimension. It's about the export of hazardous technologies, hazardous waste, and so on. And the other thing I'd like to also say is that we had friends from US, the United States, lawyers, who actually helped us connect with the academia there. So this was really fantastic in terms of the alliance, and this continues till today, where when those of us who are fighting in the front lines against these big multinationals, supported by the northern governments and also supported by our own national governments, unfortunately, and you have this big fortress which you're up against, but it was the peoples and the connections and the international struggles which managed to close that company down. So this is why international solidarity and alliance is so vital. in this struggle of ours. So it opened my eyes that you can't just focus at a local problem. These local problems actually have international connections. So what we need to recognize is that the struggles that we are facing in our part of the world and the struggles of your indigenous peoples, your local communities in your part of the world, and you are also victims of the impacts of climate change. So all this is interconnected through the same kind of production system, the economic model that is entrenched, the kind of colonialist, extractive economy, which is so parasitical in the sense that it just, extracts, and then pollutes and degrades. And those who are in the front line of the struggles are the ones who pay the price. So that's the system. That's why when we talk about, climate change is system change. So this is what we mean. So this unequal exchange actually led to the fact that many of our economies got into debt. They couldn't pay. So then they go to the International Monetary Fund. And the International Monetary Fund, instead of doing the right thing, did the wrong thing, which was actually to promote all the kind of policies, which actually was austerity, cutback, privatize. So the whole agenda, including the World Bank, because these were the post-war Bretton Woods institutions, the agenda really was to institutionalize and enable dependence of the South, the global South, on the terms or in terms of trade, in terms of finance, to an economic model which was actually to benefit the the multinational corporations, the transnationals. That was really the agenda. So this is why in the climate fight, we have to look at all these trends, like how are the trade agreements not allowing governments to do the right thing. Like I remember, and I say this very often, the Minister of Environment of Colombia last year at the Dubai COP, when she was talking about phasing out of fossil fuels, how her President Gustavo Petro announced that they were going to move away from fossil fuels and phase out. And immediately what happened was that the peso, the currency, was devalued. The credit rating agencies downgraded Colombia. So for them now when they announced to do the right thing, they were punished and penalized by the international system. It can't work this way. So there has to be transformation and changes and rollbacks in these kinds of systems, laws and regulations and policies at the international level, which actually have to be moved. We have to ditch them, basically. For the longest time, we've all been talking about how the WTO is not a friend. It's not doing the right thing. The IMF is not doing the right thing. The World Bank is not doing the right thing. And so where you have these institutions actually strangling developing countries and particularly the not allowing our governments to do the right thing. So we have to change that. We have to reform that. We have to transform that. And sometimes even reforms alone are not enough. Now, the same G7, the same historical polluters who have a responsibility to provide the climate finance, which the Paris Agreement says you have to do, they're saying that we don't have the money. Now, the biggest outrage and tragedy is that they have money for bombs, whether it is Palestine, the bombing of Palestine, the genocide that's going on, not only Palestine, but also Lebanon now. And you have the war in Ukraine where they're, where there's money for bombs, there's money for war, there is no money for climate. And this is the irony that here they are actively supporting what Israel is doing. So it's really, to many of us, it's hypocritical. The same countries who preach about human rights and respect have dismantled any notion of ethics, humanity, human rights. I know I'm saying many things, but I just want to show that this is the face, the ugly face of capitalism, which is also rooted in the military-industrial complex, which is about the production of bombs and war and the war machinery. So it cannot be in our name. And we have to do everything we can. And this is why international solidarity is so important. And beyond solidarity, real action that has to happen to stop our governments to committing these crimes and committing these bad practices and pushing these policies in our name. And that's not democracy. I mean, they're using democracy to champion something which is totally that we will not stand for. So we have to fight. I do want to emphasize that this cause that we are in terms of embarking on this movement to connect the global North with the global South, and what you're attempting to do in Canada, is really rooted in the fact that our survival is intertwined. This is a deep connection in terms of you don't do this because, oh, it's something nice to do. Meena, I heard Meena and she's talking about the global South. Okay, it's about a systemic change which is structural. And that requires us to have the awareness and the political information and the conviction that we can do this and we can change this. This is fun. There is a lot to do. Get engaged, get moved, and I hope that we can meet again somewhere in some part of the world. But let it be known that we are all part of this movement for change, and that's what we need to do. Thank you.